free agents in 2021, the Bears must look to sign. Now, obviously, this next year, we're probably going to be having a bunch of changes. And, this is going to be from the offensive line. There's going to be a lot of current players that we might trade or let walk and bring in new talent and drafting new players. There's going to be a lot of changes probably across the entire offense, maybe some of the defense. So, let's just go ahead and rattle them off. We have 4 free agents in 2021. I'll go ahead and start this one. My top one, and I truthfully believe there's a solid chance he hits the free agent market. Obviously, all this is predicated on the fact that these players hit free agency, and that's David Bakhtiari. The Packers right now are in a lot of trouble when it comes to cap space. They just gave Kenny Clark a massive extension. Aaron Rodgers is taking up a ton of their cap. And then Aaron Jones, he's going to need a contract. David Bakhtiari is going to need a contract, and a couple other pieces on the team are going to need contracts as well. So, with that in mind, one of these guys are going to have to go. Either Aaron Jones, David Bakhtiari, potentially even Aaron Rodgers. And while some may point to Aaron Rodgers and say, look, they just drafted a quarterback, when as a first-round quarterback sat for over 1 year in the NFL, it just seems like the writing's on the wall. That may not necessarily be the case. They might go ahead and say, hey, we're having a lot of success with Aaron. Let's go ahead and keep him and, roll forward. David Bakhtiari, best left tackle in the league. For an offensive line that is struggling, adding him over, Charles Leno Jr. is a huge upgrade. And then maybe if you keep Charles Leno Jr., you can swing him out to right tackle, and he'd be a great right tackle. If he's athletic enough to play left tackle, putting him at right tackle is going to be an easy job for him. Then this offensive line has this compounding effect. We have just a ton. The offensive line goes from being, a not great one to probably one of the most highly talented ones in the league, dare I say.
Yeah, it would definitely be a step up, and I like where you're thinking with the offensive line. I think that it would certainly be a huge step up from Bakhtiari to Charles Leonard Jr., and I think you're right on with being able to move him to the right side. I think that definitely work really well. Me personally, I still concern mostly about the interior of the line, although I think someone like Cody Whitehair is good and will be out there for a while. I think James Daniels is, I believe in him. I think he's decent. I think we're seeing, a little bit of a hole that he's leaving, but I wouldn't necessarily count on him, in the future. So I'd be fine with replacing him as well. So that's kind of why I was thinking guard. My first player is going to be Joe Thuney, who is currently on New England, 28. Of course, assuming he hits the market, I think that this is kind of around the age range that I think the Bears could really benefit from using a good, balance of, older and kind of younger offensive linemen. I think it'd be good for them to go out and draft them as well. And usually, you can generally scout pretty well for offensive linemen, but I think that shoring up with some veteran experience would definitely be a solid thing. And I think really, this year has kind of shown that you need, probably not just 5 solid offensive linemen, but like 6 or 7.
You need a couple, yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely gonna be relying on people to jump in, and if it's a crucial piece of offensive line that goes down, it definitely hurts, or it definitely helps to have someone that's very familiar and good at that position to step in, and I think that he would definitely help help increase that a good bit.
And it was kind of tough because I felt that with James Daniels, I thought when he was in, I didn't think the offensive line was that horrible, really. I thought that it was improved. I thought it was, probably kind of middle of the road. So that's why, I was thinking that maybe, we keep James Daniels, maybe we keep Ifedi, and we go ahead and just throw someone at the tackle position. As always, adding Joe Thuney or whoever it may be, it's going to have a compounding effect. So that's the thing with offensive line, is so much about it it's kind of similar to defense, where so much about it has to do with chemistry and the lack of a specific weakness than it does with having stars across the board. It's so much more predicated on having solid men at each position. I think adding Joe Thuney would be a big impact. So I'm going to go ahead and give my second one. And I'm going to explain myself after this because I am very pro draft the quarterback. But my second one's Dak Prescott. I think that I have to admit, I'm not a huge Dak Prescott fan. I think he's good. I think he's good enough. I think he's probably about middle of the road quarterback, maybe slightly better than that, like probably between 10 to 15 in the NFL. But he's been pretty consistent and pretty consistently above average, which is something that the Bears have probably never had, right? The Bears have never had that as a quarterback. So if we look to sign him, yeah, it's going to be a huge check we have to write out to him. It's going to be a big one too. We're going to be really, banking our future on him being good. But at the end of the day, this team has a defense that's ready to roll, and bringing in a quarterback like that might just be the piece that we need to add. Beyond that, if we go ahead and get Dak Prescott, we can draft more offensive linemen, wide receiver talent. We could spend all these draft picks on areas of need that we have outside of the quarterback, which I think would be huge as well. And it's going to take a little bit of restructuring of the team to be able to bring him in. So there are going to be some names that we know and love, maybe Allen Robinson, maybe, Kyle Fuller that we talked about, that are going to have to be moved in order to bring him in. But at the end of the day, having an above average quarterback is probably enough for this defense.
Yeah, I think that, it's an interesting name to bring into it. I think, I don't mind Dak. Like you said, I'm not over the moon about him. I think that, he probably is along the lines that, you said he is in for the league, in that 10 to 15 range, but he definitely is a step up from what the Bears have right now. That's for sure. I think that, he gives you a lot more upside and potential still too, than anyone that the Bears have on right now. I mean, obviously, I think the Bears have a pretty good idea what they have in with Mitch, and I think we know what Nick Foles is, and I think that Dak Prescott certainly has a higher ceiling than either of them. And like you said, if you go out and draft a quarterback, then you kind of have a decent room there. I mean, Dak Prescott, who has experience, but still really isn't that old, and I'd say still has upside, and then definitely a draft pick that you're really hoping can potentially be our franchise quarterback. And like you said, I mean, really they need to draft and focus on the offense this coming season. So changing up things on the offense, I think, isn't out of question. And I know Nick Foles is technically on for 2 years, but there's definitely ways that they can get him out after one. So, I think that, going after Dak Prescott is maybe a little outside of the park, or, outside the bun thinking if you're a big Taco Bell fan, but I don't know. My next player is Brandon Sherf, who is a 29-year-old offensive guard on the Washington football
multi-time
team.
All-Pro.
Yeah, multi-time All-Pro. A little bit bigger name. I feel like you're probably gonna have to spend a decent amount of money. I'm not 100% sure if he'll even hit the market, but if the Bears were able to bring him in, I mean, he's certainly someone that is definitely gonna shore up that interior of the offensive line and then some. I think that, like you said, I mean, I would definitely be happy to have the offensive line of the Bears going from one of the biggest weaknesses to one of the biggest strengths. So I definitely think that bringing in Brandon Sherf would be a big improvement.
Yeah, and I think that the Bears certainly need to add a high pick at guard or a high pick at at tackle, and then either the opposite in free agency. I think they need to add two pieces to this offensive line, and I think it could impact them greatly. I mean, this is a pretty young offensive line up front with Cody Whitehair, James Daniels. James Daniels, 22? He's extremely young. And then, add a high pick at guard, add a high pick at tackle or something like that. And just add two pieces, maybe let go for the time being right tackle Bobby Massey, let him go, and then let, Charles Leno Jr. and whoever fight out for the left tackle, right tackle spot. It could really benefit this team, and I think it would really benefit this offensive line. So yeah, I'd be a big fan of that, and I think ultimately we're kind of hitting on where this offense needs to improve most. I'd rather see them really go hard at quarterback and offensive line than try to spend big money adding more receiver talent. The one thing that I wouldn't mind is adding some more running back talent, but ultimately over receiver, tight end, all that talent, I think that it's a much higher need that we need to improve the offensive line, because I think without that, everything else is null. So it wouldn't really matter.
Yeah, and with the running backs and all that, that can be done cheap. I think that can be done in later rounds of the draft.
Definitely.
And also pretty small free agency deals. So I don't think it's anything you should really, stress yourself out, a lot. I mean, how many different running backs we talk about that have hit free agency already this year that the Bears could have went out and gotten? So, yeah, I think 100% the focus needs to be a quarterback position and the offensive line.
Hey guys, like our video, subscribe, and check out our bi-weekly podcast on Apple Podcasts. Thanks.